This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Tuesday, June 16th. This is Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees. So our broadcast will look a little different today and in the near future as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce our staffing at VOA headquarters here in Washington. We're working to help keep you informed about what's going on, and we appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. U.S. President Donald Trump is set to sign an executive order Tuesday on some police reforms, the goal of which a senior administration official says is to invest more and incentivize best practices. Briefing reporters Monday ahead of the signing, a senior administration official says the main piece will be creating certification bodies to train officers on de-escalation techniques and use of force standards. More sweeping overhauls to the nation's policing are under consideration in Congress. The Senate Judiciary Committee is holding a hearing on the issue Tuesday with testimony from law enforcement and civil rights officials. Proposals for police reforms come after 3 weeks of a nationwide protest renewed by the death in police custody of George Floyd, an African-American man who died in Minneapolis, Minnesota, after an officer knelt on his neck for nearly 9 minutes. Floyd's case triggered worldwide outrage at the use of force by police, especially against African Americans. Last Friday brought another wave of protests with police shooting and killing Rayshard Brooks in Atlanta. Meanwhile, the United Nations Human Rights Council is expected to hold an urgent debate on Wednesday on the current racially inspired human rights violations, systematic racism, police brutality, and violence against peaceful protesters. As protests spill into the streets in a number of U.S. cities, some officials are blaming the violence seen during some rallies on Antifa or anti-fascists. President Donald Trump says he wants to label Antifa as a terrorist organization. Anush Avyetsyan reports.
Antifa, short for anti-fascist, is a movement that experts say doesn't have any rigid structure or real leader. Security experts say that what they do know is people who identify themselves as Antifa in the U.S. is a relatively small group, as few as a dozen people in a given city.
Antifa ranges all the way from nonviolent progressives, this is important, who are deeply troubled by the racism and violence and vacuum with regard to addressing it here in the United States and around the world, all the way over to violent people who believe there's a siren call to eliminate not only bigotry, but institutions that they think are connected to oppression, which includes journalists, which include governments. But for the most part now, they are focused on confronting white supremacists, neo-Nazis, xenophobes, and people who they regard as such or their supporters. The problem is it's an elastic pool of people who share very different philosophies about how to confront bigotry and systemic racism, and then what to do with society in that midst. At the most hardest edge, it does embrace violence as a tactic.
People identifying themselves as Antifa were spotted at several protests in the U.S., wearing black clothes and behaving aggressively to police and journalists. But research suggests that when it comes to political violence, far-left groups are not often the problem. A University of Maryland study found 12% of all terrorist attacks in the U.S. between 2010 and 2016 were committed by left-wing groups, while 35% were instigated by the far right. In early June, President Trump sought to brand Antifa as a terrorist organization. However, legal experts explain the federal government doesn't have the legal authority to do so.
It's diverse, but it's not a group. And you need two things right now under American law. You need an actual group, and you also need some connection to an international nexus. That's just not my opinion. That's what the federal law is. And right now, we don't have that. But bottom line is, it's not a group. It's a broad philosophy.
According to the data of the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism, in 2019, white supremacists and far-right people committed 26 homicides. People who identify as Antifa have not committed any such crimes, at least in the last 3 years, according to the same data. Other researchers say any attempt to label Antifa as a terrorist group would mean other groups would also qualify on the right and left.
I guess in some instances you could call Antifa a terrorist group. But then again, if you did that label, then you would have to start giving terrorist groups. So you have to label environmentalists, you'd have to animal rights, and then on the right, you would have to start labeling the Ku Klux Klan, the Aryan Nations, World Church of the Creator, those types of organizations. So, and a lot of it goes back to that we don't really have a structured definition of what is domestic terrorism.
And if Antifa were an organized group, their tactics do not really rise to the level of terrorism, says a professor at the Washington State University who studies social movements.
I'd say Antifa is maybe 1 or 2% of the typical progressive or left protests, and they are not particularly well-liked, or the majority of nonviolent protesters. They engage in a certain degree of vandalism. They sometimes have engaged in fistfights or slug matches with right-wing protesters, but they have not done anything that's particularly violent in the way that would allow them to be designated as terrorists, as the administration has attempted to do recently.
The Federal Bureau of Investigation monitors several groups that they consider potential threats. The list includes sovereign citizens and white supremacy groups and animal rights groups and anarchists. Anusha Vitisyan for VOA News, Washington.
An effort to remove the names of Confederate leaders from U.S. military bases is gaining traction, with lawmakers from both parties setting up a clash with President Trump, who is promising to veto any legislation addressing the matter. VOA White House correspondent Patsy Widakuswara has this story on the debate over Confederate symbolism.
General Lee has completely whipped the enemy and swept the Yankee army northward from Virginia.
Gone with the Wind is a 1939 Oscar-winning film that depicts the antebellum South and the Confederacy, 11 states that fought to preserve slavery in the American Civil War of the 1860s.
Ladies, the Confederacy asks for your jewelry on behalf of our noble cause.
It has been removed by streaming service HBO Max, which cited racial prejudices. Dozens of statues of Confederate figures have been removed or vandalized, while the race car body NASCAR has banned the Confederate flag on its racetracks. These symbols have emerged as a flashpoint since the death of George Floyd in police custody in Minneapolis that triggered weeks of protests nationwide.
There's just something very visceral about having to look at the glorification of the people and the symbols that really wanted to have you, your people who look like you, held in chattel slavery.
Another front in the battle, 10 Army bases that bear the names of Confederate officers, including Fort Bragg, Fort Hood, and Fort Lee. With military leadership signaling support, a Republican-led Senate panel has approved a plan from a Democratic senator to remove these names from military installations.
This is the right time for it, and I think it sends the right message.
They're set to clash with President Donald Trump, who has threatened a veto. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany.
These monumental and very powerful bases have become part of a great American heritage and a history of winning, victory, and freedom.
The 1776 U.S. Declaration of Independence states that all human beings are created equal. Yet, while slavery was abolished in 1865, African Americans continue to endure the devastating effects of discrimination until now. Confederate symbols are emblematic of that paradox.
Here is a symbol of that represents the persistence of that ongoing contradiction between equality declared but equality denied.
Hunter said that while politics is about compromise, culture is about the things that are sacred, that people do not want to compromise over. By taking sides in a culture war, Trump will likely deepen polarization ahead of the November election. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News, Washington.
Senegalese artists are taking a stand against racism and police brutality after George Floyd died in police custody in the United States. One street art crew is creating a fresco in Dakar, where Senegalese have held demonstrations this month in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. Esther Githui-Ewart reports from Dakar.
In Dakar, anti-racist protests have found their way through urban culture. A dozen of street artists involved in social justice in Senegal have created a fresco to support the Black Lives Matter movement. This wall took 2 days of work and has been dedicated to African decolonial leaders and figures of black liberation in the United States.
These are images that they are not used to seeing. Here in Senegal, walking past a wall where a Harriet Tubman is represented, it pushes young people to wonder who Harriet Tubman is.
An artistic initiative supported by the youth of Dakar.
Last time we saw a black man killed in the United States of America, everyone protested against this racist action, which continues to spread. Since grade school, we've been taught equality between men. They come to give us a message of awareness, to show us that they also demonstrate, but in an artistic way.
Last week, a symbolic protest against police brutality against people of color in the United States and France took place in Dakar. The 2016 Voice Africa contestant Ida Sok improvised a song about unity and power. With her friends, she organized the protest in a few days on social media. Fighting racism is something that she can relate as a former U.S. resident.
And it was not just about Black Americans, it was about Black Americans, it was about Black people, it was about Africans, it was about anybody that be going through oppression.
Protesters are planning to increase their numbers through organizing a new protest in July. Esther Githui-Ewart for VOA News, Dakar, Senegal.
The largest market in Mozambique's capital, Maputo, remains closed Tuesday, the second day of a 3-day sanitizing and reorganization to fight the spread of coronavirus. The action being taken at Zipanine Market is the beginning of the gradual temporary closing of the capital's 63 markets and 5 fairs for disinfecting, new spacing of stalls, implementation of social distancing between merchants and customers, and the wearing of face masks to help prevent the spread of coronavirus. Alice Diabru, Municipal Councillor for Health and Social Welfare, says the closings are important because COVID-19 cases were detected in the city's markets, but she did not name the markets. Mozambique experienced a spike in COVID-19 cases last weekend, which increased by 74. The Southern African country confirms just over 600 coronavirus cases and 3 deaths. In West Africa, Tuesday is day 2 of a resident doctors' strike in Nigeria public hospitals as they demand better benefits. Among their demands, the resident doctors are seeking a COVID-19 pay supplement in addition to life insurance and more funds in the federal budget for their training. Doctors treating COVID-19 patients will stay on the job, but their union, the National Association of Resident Doctors, is giving the government 2 weeks to meet their demands, or else they say they will also walk out. Nigeria has had more than 16,000 confirmed cases of the virus and 420 deaths. The British government is facing strong criticism for its response to the coronavirus pandemic, as latest forecasts suggest the economy could be the world's worst hit. Britain has the world's second highest death toll from the virus and is emerging from its lockdown later than most of Europe. Henry Ridgwell reports from London.
Early March, as the coronavirus pandemic spread across Europe, Italy, Spain and France enforced tough lockdowns. But in Britain, streets were busy, supermarkets packed. The country eventually locked down on March 23rd, mainly on the advice of scientists from Imperial College London, who predicted hundreds of thousands of deaths if the virus was left unchecked. Professor Neil Ferguson was one of those scientists, and on Wednesday offered this stark appraisal to lawmakers.
Had we introduced lockdown measures a week earlier, we would have reduced the final death toll by at least a half.
Ferguson resigned from the government's Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies, or SAGE, after he was caught breaking the lockdown rules. Britain has recorded more than 41,000 deaths from COVID-19, the second highest death toll in the world after the United States. Prime Minister Boris Johnson defends the government's response.
We made the decisions at the time on the guidance of SAGE, including Professor Ferguson, that we thought were right for this country.
Britain is still recording hundreds of deaths and thousands of new infections every day, more than its European neighbours, though the government says that's partly due to differences in reporting. But many scientists say Britain did too little, too late.
We had a very relaxed, keep people socially distanced, try to stay at home. It was more of a nudge approach as opposed to that's the rules.
Britain's lockdown is slowly easing. Zoos, theme parks and small shops open next week. Pubs and restaurants remain closed. Cafes in France, Italy and Spain have reopened, as have most schools. In Britain, most pupils will not return to school until September at the earliest. Critics say children are being ignored.
I think we are in danger of leaving children behind in this lockdown lifting and possibly furloughing childhood.
Several European states are banning the entry of travellers from Britain because of its high infection rate. Yet Britain this week introduced a 14-day quarantine for all arrivals in the country, to the dismay of the travel industry.
Imported cases of the virus pose a more significant threat to our national effort and our recovery.
The extended lockdown is likely to hit Britain's economy hard. The OECD Wednesday forecast an 11.5% contraction in 2020, the worst of all developed economies, though only marginally worse than France, Spain and Italy. Any second wave of infection would have an even bigger impact. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, a Tanzanian mother of a child with sickle-cell disease fights to protect him from contracting COVID-19. We'll be right back after this break.
Hello, I'm Linor Moudou, your VOA health correspondent.
Let us be perfectly clear. All countries.
During the COVID-19 pandemic, the World Health Organization says there is no information or evidence suggesting that the coronavirus can be transmitted by mosquitoes.
There are 2 published studies.
It is a respiratory virus which spreads primarily through droplets, generated when an infected person coughs or sneezes, or through droplets of saliva or discharge from the nose.
This happened during pandemics in the past.
For more information on COVID-19, visit who.int or contact your local or national health authorities.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Zuhura Hassan is a Tanzanian mother struggling to keep her son safe during the coronavirus pandemic. Zuhura's 5-year-old son, Hayan Hamoud, is one of the estimated 11,000 Tanzanian children who are born with sickle cell disease each year. Sickle cell is a blood disorder that leads to immunity deficiency. This puts Hayan into a high-risk group that could become more severely compromised by COVID-19 should it infect him. VOA's Barbara Santos and Yuna Lee produced this story.
Alizaliwa mzima kama watoto wengine alipofikisha miezi 5. Alianzisha dalili ya mwanzo ambayo watoto wengine wa sickle-cell wanaipata. Alikuwa na vimba vidole umo kwenye joints. Akivimba hapa, hasa inategemea ile crisis, kama imetokea upande huu basi atavimba huku, kama imetokea upande huu atavimba huku. Nakumbuka alikuwa na mwaka mmoja na miezi kama 8 hivi, kama sio 6, 7, 8 hapo, sikumbuki vizuri. Ila nadhani 8. Aliugua sana. Popote utakapomgusa anauma. Daktari alikuwa anamtibia
alimzoea kwamba akija hospitali akamtibia siku 2 walau mtoto anatabasamu, anaonyesha nafuu. Yaani wakati huu umenikatalia, yaani kama vile mbona kila dawa ninayokupa haikunyanyui. Nikasali, nikamwambia Mungu, kama ndo wakati ambao unataka kumchukua mwanangu, basi naomba mchukue katika kumuondolea maumivu. Hivyo tu, nikaongea hivyo. Nikakaa sasa, nikawa tu namwangalia. Wewe unaogopa Unaogopa watu? Kwa mimi kabla hata hawajafunga shule, tayari mimi nilishapanga kwamba ataacha kwenda shule mpaka corona itakapoisha. Mbona unaandika ndogo ndogo? Kubwa. Ngumu, yani inakuwa ngumu sana. Wakati mwingine unakuwa unamsimamia, unajiuliza hivi saizi nipo namsimamia, kesho ikitokea mwanangu amepata corona, alafu naanza kujiuliza, naangalia fursa tu ambayo inakuja. Sina specific thing wala sina duka. Kwa kuna wakati naweza nikaamua nikatengeneza juice, nikapeleka chuoni, wanafunzi wanakunywa hivyo. Sasa hivi kama hivyo vyuo si vimefungwa. Kwa hiyo imeaffect kwa kiasi kikubwa sana tu, wala yani kama ni asilimia tunaweza tukasema zaidi ya 80. Na watakuja wengine, ila sitaki kuamini kwamba hataishi Mungu alivyompangia eti kwa sababu ya Sickle-cell. Kama Mungu amempangia ataenda, basi ataenda kwa shida yoyote, sio lazima iwe Sickle-cell. Na kama ataenda kivyovyote vile njia atakayokuwa amepangiwa, sio kwa lazima iwe Sickle-cell. Kwa mimi sifikirii kwamba huyu itafika miaka fulani atapotea kwa ajili ya huu ugonjwa. Mimi naamini nitaishi naye, nitamuozesha, nitapata wajukuu, hata na vitukuu mimi naamini nitapata.
Ghanaian shoemaker Tony Senaya says that his full-year profit is likely to fall by at least 50% and he is unlikely to hire new people. Horseman, which makes shoes and other leather products, has been grappling with harsh conditions as a result of COVID-19. Africa 54's Paul Ndiho spoke to Senaya, CEO of Horseman Shoes in Ghana, about the current business climate.
Mr. Tony Senaya, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you very much, Paul.
You and I had a conversation. You told me your business was expanding and you're looking at a better 2020. Coronavirus hit us and you are subjected to a lockdown. Maybe tell me how that has impacted you and your business.
We were badly hit, especially when the first set of cases were reported in Ghana. In that particular week, our sales slowed down drastically. The following week, we didn't record any sales at all. So actually, before the president announced that we stayed home, we had already taken the decision to stay home a week before because sales were very slow, and I didn't want to put the lives of my workers in danger because they come to work via public transport. So yes, and for a very long period, about 6 weeks, we hadn't recorded sales, and simply because people were staying at home. And at that particular moment, nobody needed shoes to go anywhere.
For you, this has been very, very bad in a sense that everything that you've always done to your best of your knowledge has sort of come to a halt.
Everything came to a halt, even including our marketing communication. We couldn't even churn out a lot of marketing material. So every conversation was around COVID. Nothing business was moving.
Are things getting back to normal? Where do you stand as far as your business is concerned?
Business is slow because our target group, who are mainly young professionals, most corporations are asking their workers to work from home. It means still limited movement, And again, we get a lot of sales through social activities like weddings and parties, but there's still restrictions on social gathering. So yes, that sale is not coming. People are not getting married, or people are doing weddings, but not the big weddings that will demand that they buy new shoes and all that. So yes, business is yet to pick up, but we hope that this will pass quickly so we will get our lives.
A lot of entrepreneurs that I've talked to, when COVID hit, they all had to think outside of the box and come up with different ways of marketing, different ways of selling their products. Have you done something like that so that you can stay afloat?
Yes, we have started manufacturing other leather products that are more intimate, like bracelets, bookmarks, table covers. So these are personal home items that we've started manufacturing of leather, just to keep the cash flow going until things become normal.
You talked about keeping your employees safe. Were you able to keep them happy? Were you able to keep their salaries going?
Our main staff, yes, we did, but we all agreed that the circumstances, and then being aware that our revenues have been hit, they decided to take pay cuts.
The government of Ghana, in a way, said that they are going to give out loans, not as a stimulus package, but some loans to help a few businesses or startups that are struggling. Are you aware of that program?
Yes, I am very much aware of the program, and I will apply for that small business loans, and the conditions are very favorable. They are giving us 1 year moratorium and then 2 years to pay. So in all, 3 years with little interest. So it's a welcome program that businesses are going to take advantage of, including myself.
What does the future look like for Osman Shoes?
The future holds for us limitless opportunities, because had it been COVID-19, we wouldn't have thought of some actions that we are taking now. We would have thought of, maybe we would have, but not immediately, some products that we are working on now. Yes, we sincerely believe that the world will open up again. Our lives may not be the same, but things that we need to make our life easier, will not go away. So yes, we are very hopeful that yes, Horseman will get on his feet and the horse will still run.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you too, Paul.
That was Africa 54's Paul Ndiho speaking to Tony Senaya, CEO of Horseman Shoes in Accra, Ghana. Burundi is set to swear in President-elect Evariste Ndayishimiye on Thursday, a week after the sudden death of outgoing President Pierre Nkurunziza, according to media reports. The Constitutional Court ruled last week that the president-elect be sworn in as soon as possible. Ndayishimiye was originally planned to be sworn in August, but he will take the oath of office Thursday in the capital, Gitega. Ndayishimiye was handpicked by the ruling National Council for the Defense of Democracy Party to succeed Nkurunziza. He went on to secure more than 60% of the vote in the May election that was unsuccessfully contested by the opposition over allegations of fraud. Ndayishimiye will serve a 7-year term pending his re-election. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching.